name is Neil Jordan. As Dan said, I have the pleasure of running our healthcare group at Microsoft, and my most common question when I come to conferences like this, or the question I hear most often is, Microsoft? Healthcare? Why are you here? I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I'm here. I'm not going to talk much about Microsoft today. You know, I think we're probably the stingiest company in the world when it comes to sponsoring conferences. So this will be actually the only time you see the Microsoft logo on my slides. If you see it at any other point, you're more than welcome to shout out the secret word, which could be squirrel, for example, this afternoon. But I'm going to try and take this theme of data, exponential data, and share a few observations really from around the world and from the experience that I've had in the last 10 years with the global health interest at Microsoft, around what I think it's going to take to make this truly become exponential. And I hope that's going to be a useful way to spend 10 minutes or so. But before I do that, I'm going to offer you a little moment of Zen. I don't know about you, but the intensity of what's going on here at the conference to me is almost overwhelming. I'm finding the amount of information, the richness of the information is almost like jumping into an entire box of truffles and trying to eat them, you know, every 15 minutes and just keep going at it. So I believe very strongly, I'll talk a little bit about mental health in a minute. I believe in mental health as an extremely important part of one's overall health and wellness. So I'm going to give you a little mental health break right now, and I'm actually going to read you a poem. And I hope that's a poem that's going to be of interest to you, particularly as we get very close to the Festival of Lights, Diwali, which is, I think, being celebrated tomorrow, in fact, if I'm right. I wanted to share, and today, I wanted to share a wonderful poem by Judy Brown. Who's heard of Judy Brown before? Okay, Judy Brown, not heard? If you know this poem, enjoy hearing it again. If you don't, I encourage you to turn off any devices you have for a minute. Close your eyes. Do the opposite of leaning in. Lean out. Have a little moment of Zen-like bliss, and I'll read you a short poem. Oh, you have a decision to make first. Like all good Microsoft employees these days, I'm bilingual. I have a Surface and an iPad. In fact, I'm trilingual. I should probably have an Android tablet up here as well. We love them all equally these days. Which device would you like me to use? iPad. Okay, that one came out first, so I'll use that one. Just a bit of fun, huh? This is a poem called Fire by Judy Brown. What makes a fire burn is space between the logs, a breathing space. Too much of a good thing, too many logs, packed in too tight, can douse the flames almost as surely as a pail of water would. So building fires requires attention to the spaces in between as much as to the wood. When we are able to build open spaces in the same way we have learned to pile on the logs, then we can come to see how it is fuel and absence of the fuel together that make fire possible. We only need to lay a log lightly from time to time. A fire grows simply because the space is there with openings in which the flame that knows just how it wants to burn can find its way. Thanks for indulging me. Hope you enjoyed that. What do you think? Nice poem? By Judy Brown, it's called Fire. Whoa. The applause is for her. Okay. So 3.5 observations about making data exponential. Observation number 1. Insights need to be for all, not just for us geeks. I feel incredibly passionate about the ability of a company like Microsoft and many of the other ones who you're going to hear about today to bring healthcare IT to many more people. I sometimes describe myself on a stage like this as a fascist hippie when it comes to healthcare IT. And what I mean by that is that I believe everyone should have access to all these incredible technologies that we're talking about, but oh my God, can we stop talking about it and just absolutely get on with it? So it's incredibly important that all of the technology that is going to enable a lot of the incredible insights that you've seen today, if we're going to get exponential about this, is not only highly commoditized and available to many people, but puts people first and makes things extremely easy to use. This is a video of some work that we did at a hospital in Madison, Wisconsin called Meriter. Like many hospitals around there and many hospitals around the US, they too have opened up their wallets wide and bought the Epic monolith and are now trying to find a way of getting useful data, really meaningful data, out of it. We went and worked with them for about a day, about half a day, and they talked to us about all of the different information that they had and asked us whether we could put some thought into building a population health management system for them, and at least a way of getting data out of it. And so we built this thing that you can see kind of running through quite nicely now, and it brings in data from their own DRGs, from their own Epic system, data externally. It does some interesting work around predictive analysis. It even brings in some demographic data around the location of gyms, exercise, and so forth. They were trying to understand the patterns of disease in their area, particularly important as they get to value-based payments. What may be, nothing of that is surprising, I'm sure, to anyone who's in this room. What may be surprising is that this relatively advanced population health management tool is one that they already owned and that retails for around about $100 a user. Everything you just saw was Excel. And I don't mean it to push it specifically as a product, but what we're really trying to do here is take, what we did with their permission was then take all of this data and this idea and open source it much more broadly across the US. And we're doing that pretty much in every country that we go to, trying to find areas where we can create very simple access to everyone for data. We're also working very hard on natural language processing so that the people who get to ask questions of the data do not need to be data scientists. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a short while. Observation number 2. Beware of the shiny object, specifically the shiny data object. Now, it was fun sitting at the back yesterday and being told that I was going to bring some HoloLenses up on stage to tell everybody about HoloLens. Now, there are two really unfair things about HoloLens. The first thing is that if I'm wearing it around stage and telling you how awesome it is, I'm just going to look like an idiot and you're going to have absolutely no idea what's going on. The second thing about it is that in some ways it's the shiny object which can detract from the really interesting piece. This is some work that we've done. You may well have seen this. There's a lot more information on the web about this, where we're helping Case Western, who, as you know, is the medical school allied to Cleveland Clinic, rethink how a medical school works. Now, the interesting thing is everybody latches on, globs onto this thing, because they love the fact that one of the big bets that they're making is that they're going to create a medical school that doesn't have any cadavers in it, because we're going to do 3D imaging and use HoloLens for anatomy teaching. And it is an awesome story. But I've got to tell you, the much more awesome story is how we're trying to help rethink and reinvent the whole process and the whole area of productivity around learning. So yes, the objects are fun. We've seen a lot of them. But actually, the fundamental aspect of what we're trying to do underneath it is more important. And never could that be more important than data, and specifically making data more exponential. So here's an interesting correlation of data. Think about correlation versus cause. Death caused by X-ray contrast media correlates with a correlation of 0.8805 to bicyclists killed in collision with 2- or 3-wheeled motor vehicles. That's what our computer said. Not very helpful. On the next one, with a correlation of, we're going up by the way, 0.993. Suicides by hanging, strangulation, and suffocation correlates to the number of lawyers in North Carolina. You tell me whether there's causation or correlation. Next one of my favorite ones. Apple iPhone sales correlates with people who died falling down the stairs. You get what I'm saying here. We can have all of the best technology in the world, but we need to think more broadly about how it interacts with people and how people use it more broadly. And we're working extremely hard, both in the product part of our organization and also in the area that is working specifically in research, to try and make this much, much more easy. My personal favorite one here is potential opium production in Afghanistan and a side-on picture of Mount Everest. That one's actually not real. Okay, observation number 3. HIT and the cloud need to be friends. Right now, I'd say healthcare information technology and its use of the cloud are kind of, they're casual. They've been on a couple of dates. They had a good time. They've still got Tinder or Grindr on their phone. They haven't got rid of it yet. And if there was ever an industry that really needed to start using the cloud in a much, much more avaricious way and frankly strategic way, it's the health industry. Health is, as we've heard many times, probably the most fragmented and disconnected industry out there. It's also one where, speaking very honestly and supportively of all of the customers that I get to work with at Microsoft, often enterprise-class IT skills are not first on the list of things that need to be built inside hospitals and inside the health system. And so we have to think about how we can get the cloud much more broadly used. So let's talk about what the blocker is. This is particularly important when we talk about data and making data exponential. None of the systems that you've seen today, or the incredible deep learning or machine learning, is ever going to be possible if we don't use the cloud, both in terms of the computing power and the aggregating power of data. And today, if I look at the Microsoft numbers, the health industry is the one that has the lowest use of the cloud of any industry that we work with. And the main reason for that is fear. People are very fearful and confused about what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do in the cloud. And it's a fascinating time that I have. I probably spend 50% of my time, I could get very boring about this, trust me, talking about this particular topic. As we go around the world, I spend my time on my knees to ministers of health and legislators saying, you've got to rethink your legislation, and when you do that, please don't build a new one. The alphabet soup already of attestations and certifications that companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and IBM need to attest to for this most important market is already completely unattainable. And every country that I go to, there's a new one on the list. And so we spend a lot of time trying to help manage that piece. And I would ask you as ambassadors for and disciples of exponential medicine, whether you're doing it for Amazon, whether you're doing it for Microsoft, whether you're doing it for IBM, to think broadly about how we can help people get much more comfortable with using the cloud in healthcare and help them understand that actually the factors associated from a security perspective are way, 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 way lower when they use the cloud than when they're using on-premise. In fact, it's interesting for us, we get to monitor from our cyber crime unit at Microsoft all of the attacks that are happening around the world. And it is frightening to see how many more attacks are happening right now in the health environment. We have a lot of examples of people who have used on-premise equipment as a way to get into the health system. And rather than trying to get information, they're actually trying to hold the healthcare system hostage. And they're saying, hey, we've got control of some really interesting equipment in operating room 4 right now. We'd be really interested in how much that's worth to you for us to not turn off X, Y, and Z. And much more of those problems come out of the on-premise world than come out of the cloud world. That's the point that I'm making. So fear is a strong negative motivator here. And my final observation 3.5, and this is actually the most important one. If data is truly going to become, and insights are truly going to become exponential in the health world. You've probably heard of the phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Well, culture also eats insight for breakfast. One of the reasons why I got involved in the health world is my dad. My dad's a pediatric cardiologist. He spent his time, he's retired now, he spent his time working for the NHS in the UK, really starting practice almost 40 years ago in a very, very early stage practice. By the time he retired, there were 2 surgeons who were working on the team who were not getting the kind of results that were expected. At that point, there were probably only 3 or 4 major pediatric heart surgery centers in the UK. One of them was in Bristol, where my dad worked. It was the main reason why I decided not to be a doctor in the end, because I saw him go through unbelievable pain. Because although in their days, they weren't even tracking any of this data, people knew what was going on. But the culture of fear inside the organization and the culture of hierarchy stopped any of this being brought to mind. And as we use data more broadly in the health system, both at a consumer level and at an enterprise level, we need to be incredibly sensitive and very cognizant of the fact that data needs to be used in an empowering way, not in a judgmental way. And I see it being used many, many times, too much, as a judgmental rather than an empowering technology. And it will simply get rejected if it's not used more that way. Now, we as a company are going through a cultural transformation ourselves. If you haven't noticed it, then perhaps we should talk louder, or perhaps we should talk more quietly. I don't know. We've changed a lot, and to be fair to both Steve and our new CEO, Satya Nadella, this is a slightly unfair picture of Steve in this organization. And in truth, a lot of the decisions that brought about the Microsoft that you see today versus the Microsoft that you saw probably 5 or 6 years ago came from things that Steve put in place. He actually was responsible for the decision to put a team in place to put a lot of our products across multiple other operating systems like iOS and Android. But I say this because culture is so important. The amount of time that we're putting into this at Microsoft to change our own culture, which frankly has been way too aggressive, way too judgmental. Our own use of data has been used as an HR tool rather than, frankly, as an empowerment tool. We are spending an incredible amount of time to change this and a lot of energy to change this. And I don't see it happening yet broadly in the healthcare world. I was incredibly moved and motivated by Alice Phoebe singing yesterday, and she's going to sing again later. I mean, she was just extraordinary. But the thing I was unbelievably sad about was the fact, she said it twice, in fact. She said, "Oh, it's incredible to be here with all you amazing people. I feel so stupid. I sat down at dinner with these incredibly smart people, and oh my God, they made me feel stupid." And the point is, nobody who was sitting with her at lunch was trying to make her feel stupid. But this stuff that we talk about, the way we talk about it, the language that we use, is intimidating. And we need to think very broadly about how data and the use of data culturally can be used, again, as an empowering tool, as something that broadly helps elevate everyone and is not used as a tool to differentiate too much. So I'm going to leave it there. If anybody wants to talk about what we are doing in healthcare more broadly, here's a very quick summary of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to specifically do. But more than anything else, we're trying to create technology and platforms that are useful, that create empowerment. It's a word you've heard a lot today, and it's a word that's overused and that's abused. And ultimately, we're trying to create something which can really help solve some of these incredibly important and difficult social problems that we've all been talking about and will continue to talk about for the rest of today. Thank you for your time. I've really enjoyed the opportunity speaking with you all, and I look forward to, I'll be here right through till Thursday and would love to catch up with some more of you. Thanks very much.